You might catch yourself sliding in and out of a hallucinatory state after this is all over. If you do, just relax and enjoy it.
This is an experiment in mind formation. Information, forming, controlling, operating in your mind and your brain. We're using digital techniques to overload, scramble, confuse, unfocus your mind.
We are here to save the Earth.
Channel 7 is now pleased to present Night Hour, proud paid Pennsylvania programming. Y'all sit back, relax, enjoy, and learn a little something. Brought to you by the Pennsylvania State Library.
Our riches and our numbers burden the world.
If you remember the dramatic pictures taken by the Apollo flyers of the Earth, standing out in space all by itself, no one after seeing that could deny that the world is finite. Then it's impossible for people to go on saying we have an infinite supply of air, an infinite supply of water, an infinite supply of minerals. Man must learn to balance his activities in nature against the regenerative power of nature, or he is inevitably going to join the Tyrannosaurus in extinction.
As we grow richer, there is rising concern about pollution, our ability to feed a growing population, and fears that we may run out of fuel and metals.
A computer at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology has been used to look at these problems, to analyze in broad terms the direction in which our world is headed. Sponsored by a group of businessmen and academics, the Club of Rome, its conclusions are revolutionary.
The most important lesson is that we're near the end of our development of society, which has been going on for about 2,000 years. That we've reached levels of prosperity which carry the seeds of disruption and necessitate a complete re-look at the whole world's social, political, and other situations.
It's telling us that the world is in a completely unstable situation and is likely to fall to pieces if it doesn't stop growing.
Let's put it bluntly. Our option is not between this kind of society, present society, and a stable state society. It is between a stable state society and chaos.
The world is 6 billion years old. That is unimaginable. So think of it as a week. All through Sunday and most of Monday, nothing much happens. Late Monday night, a cell divides. Life has begun. Through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and most of Saturday, life becomes more complex and more beautiful. In a barren universe, life on Earth is being sustained by an increasingly stable and complex biology. At tea time on Saturday, it is the age of the reptiles. At 3 minutes to midnight, man appears. 1 second before midnight, man the hunter becomes man the farmer. At 1/40th of a second to midnight, the Industrial Revolution begins. The revolution begins. The revolution begins. The revolution begins. At 3 minutes to midnight, the revolution begins.
strives to make the world we live in a better place. Our research facilities located in Ohio, Indiana, and Pennsylvania work day and night to develop new agricultural technologies that will vastly change the way we make produce. In addition, genetic modification efforts will allow for more quantities of food at a lower price. We hope that one day our technologies will help to lead our planet to a brighter future. EcoHelix, a Viacorp company.
In that last 40th of a second, we have started to get richer at an ever-increasing rate. Growth is explosive. Population now doubles in 30 years. Man now uses twice as much energy as he did 15 years ago. And industrial production has nearly trebled in the last 15 years.
During this program, men on the Earth will consume 200,000 tons of petroleum and 200,000 tons of coal, produce 2,000 motor cars, and use 400 million kilowatts of electricity.
If we use known stocks at present rates, there will be no copper left in 2008, no zinc in 1995, no tin in 1989, and no mercury in 1985. There will be no silver, without which we cannot make films, in 1987.
Today we consume more than yesterday. Our children, if they live as we do, will use up resources more than twice as fast as we do.
Our grandchildren might need twice as much oil as we found in Alaska just to meet their increased needs for 1 year.
Such growth threatens to use up all the resources the Earth has to offer us. Such are the enormous needs of the industrial society in progress.
The Industrial Revolution has consumed vast quantities of fossil fuels, for example, and now there aren't many left. And it's as simple as that. If you have a kind of society which is going to eat the very planet we're on, eat it up, consume it, you will find that there's nothing left. Simple as that. If you have a kind of society which is going to eat the very planet we're on, eat it up, consume it, you will find that there's nothing left. 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 It's as simple as that.
Jezebel don't even stand a chance. Jezebel don't even stand a chance.
Eat the very planet we're on, eat it up, consume it, consume it, consume it, consume it.
To understand what the
Will get twice that been onto my land. I draw the line, it's written in the sand. Try me and you will see that I ain't playing. Now, back up off my family, move your hands. I got my weapons in the spirit's land.
Consume it, consume it, consume it.
Nature,
Consume it.
the ecosystem, attacks the fabric and stability of our industry, the way we make things, on which all life, including man, depends.
It has been developed to exploit the ecosystem without taking into account its continued existence. And our new technologies tend to disrupt ecological cycles, to break them, to intrude harmful, unnatural materials on them, and therefore to destroy the base of its own existence. Because of that, we are on a suicidal course.
We are faced by dilemmas. Industry cannot exist without the raw materials it must use up. Nor can it function without the natural world that it may be destroying. So great is our progress that it may push the Earth to its limits and beyond. We threaten a confrontation with nature. Progress to that confrontation is speeding up.
Life has begun. The revolution begins. The revolution begins. The revolution begins. 1 second before midnight, revolution begins. Life has begun.
What we're really being told is that although nobody knows for sure exactly when it will happen or exactly what risk is the greatest risk man faces, scientists are fairly unanimous in saying that man does face extremely important risks.
When global population is doubling every 33 years, when resource consumption is doubling every 20 years, no long-term view of mankind can proceed without first forming some preliminary answers to these questions.
Professor Dennis Meadows, at a conference in Washington to mark the publication of his team study for the Club of Rome, The Limits to Growth. It concludes that economic growth always generates a crisis, that the road to riches is the road to disaster.
Even if we solve problems like pollution, growth within a century or so would lead to widespread famine and social chaos. Dennis Meadows and his team used a computer. He explains why.
And then we express these mathematically. It's a methodology that we use. We mint the available information on the relationships in some system, and then we express these mathematically, put them into a computer to calculate the result of individual relationships, organized to perceive the individual relationships with system dynamics, but very difficult indeed without any assistance from a computer to understand what their implications will be when they interact.
The man-made world consists of a whole complex of subtle relationships like that. At first sight, there doesn't seem to be much relationship between the man-made world.
The equations in the computer define these relations, not only
the man-made world
but over
consists
many
of a
years.
whole complex of subtle relationships like
not only immediately, but over many years.
Change one thing,
Computer
and it sets
define
up a
these
slow
relations.
and complicated chain reaction.
Without any assistance from
The
a
equations in the computer define these
relations.
relations.
Like
So the
that.
computer can show how one thing affects everything else. Define these relations, not only immediately, but over many years.
Without any understand
The runs on a computer show how defining these will interact and
The
affect
man-made
man's
world
future.
consists of a whole complex of subtle relationships.
The equations in the
like
computer define these relationships to see what would happen if man successfully tackled his obvious problems. If he grew more food, found more natural resources, and controlled pollution.
But first they ran the computer to see what direction the world would take if it ran its present course.
As the century unfolds,
industry grows, as does food production and population. But we're using up all our raw materials, the limited metals and fuel in the earth. These run out. Without fuel and metals for the factories, industry collapses.
farming has become highly mechanized, and without petrol and electricity, food production falls too.
There's no food and massive unemployment. The population, people are dying.
Dennis Meadows explains.
Yarayphat haticha abhat mer se pautjitien tosiatio. Rachunin sum ah.
What might this mean in human terms to the average Western family?
This time, natural resources used carefully run down slowly.
But industry continues to grow. This industrial growth produces a serious pollution problem. Pollution attacks both people and plants. Crops cannot grow. The population starts to collapse when people die of hunger and pollution.
Industry, without a workforce, collapses too. Resources still used carefully fall slowly.
And now food production, backed by the Green Revolution, rises.
The system, pollution still controlled, is no problem.
It's experiencing explosive growth. The lines go off the graph. This growth of industry is so huge and rapid that it suddenly generates a pollution problem, despite pollution controls. And the industry and the population collapses.
Population is stabilized. Only 2 children per family. Industrial production and food production surge ahead.
And pollution rises too. The system is growing. But again, industry uses too many resources which run out, bringing down the system yet again.
Population control is not sufficient either. Population control is not sufficient either.
Has 2 important advantages over other studies in this field, and there have been many other studies. The first is that the computer allows you to handle a very complex situation. An enormous number of interrelated effects, so complex that one could not grasp all these within one human mind. computer can handle those easily and explore the way they evolve. That's the first point. Second point, I think, is that because you have to put it into a computer, you have to get all your assumptions out on the table. And that means that the thing is very precise, and if someone doesn't like the model or the assumptions, they can see exactly what bits they don't like and take those out and put their own in. They can see exactly what bits they don't like and take those out and
Skeptics
put
say
their own in.
forecasts of doom are the result of doomsday assumptions. Make different assumptions, change the equations a little, you will produce very different results. If you put nonsense
So
into a computer,
complex
they
that
say,
one
you
could
get
not
nonsense
grasp all
out.
these within one human mind.
I think that's a very reasonable response. The question comes, of course, is it possible to put something into the computer which can be defended as reasonable, which alters the conclusions? I'm rather confident that while in the precise nature of our conclusions, there will ultimately be made changes, that the general conclusions, the fact that growth has a tendency to resolve itself through collapse, those conclusions are simply not going to be altered by any reasonably defensible additions to the model.
The computer does not predict. The computer does not sketch the direction in which our world is moving. It clarifies some of the conflicts between the natural and the man-made world. Nature is balance. Tamper with one part of it, and the complex and unexpected will turn up in another part. That is what the study shows. The computer does not predict. Clarifies some...
The equations in the computer define these relationships. Technological societies, too, are highly interconnected. Intervention may have unexpected and unfortunate results. Intervention may have unexpected and unfortunate results. Intervention may have unexpected and unfortunate results. Technological societies, too, are highly interconnected.
It doesn't prophesy, but it does give us a new way of seeing the world. It is showing us how and why some of our most serious problems interrelate.
The model is simple. The world is complex.
So
the
complex
crude predictions we see in the
one
study
could
would
not
appear in the
grasp
world
all
in much
these
more complex
within one
ways.
human mind.
The real event, if it happens, would certainly be more complicated.
It does give us a new way of seeing the world. It is showing us how and why some of our most serious problems interrelate.
The model is simple. The world is complex.
So complex.
The crude
that
predictions we see in the
one could not
study would
grasp
appear in the
all
world
these
in much more
within
complex
one human
ways.
mind.
The real event, if it happens, would certainly be more complicated.
It is showing us how and why some of our most serious problems interrelate.
The model is simple. The world is complex.
So complex.
The crude
that
predictions we
one
see in the
could not
study would
grasp
appear in the
all
world
these
in much more
within
complex
one human
ways.
mind.
The real event, if it happens, would certainly be more complicated.
In a barren universe, life on Earth is being sustained by an increasingly stable and complex biology. One second before midnight, the revolution begins. The revolution begins. The revolution begins. The revolution begins. 1 second before midnight, the revolution begins. 1 second before midnight.
Jezebel don't even stand a chance. Jezebel don't even stand a chance.
I'm sorry, we're gonna have...